Okay. Good morning. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Craig Miller, who's the Riverside County Water Task Force Chair and General Manager of Western Municipal Water District. Go ahead, Craig.
Well, good morning, everyone. So happy to be here today. Welcome to the Riverside County Water Task Force, August 26th. Can you believe it's August, man? It's time to go Christmas shopping already. Can't believe it. Well, we have a great program today. Really looking forward to it. Can't not talk about drought these days. It's in the news, it's everywhere. So we're going to focus on that today. We have a little different format, which hopefully you're going to find fun. We're working hard to try and keep these task force meetings interesting and a little different than your typical Zoom seminars. So again, I'm Craig Miller. I'm the General Manager at Western Municipal Water District. I'm the Chairman of the Riverside County Task Force. I also want to make sure I introduce the Vice Chair, Jason Uli from Riverside County Flood Control. The purpose of the task force, as most of you know that are returning audience members, this is a coalition of Western Municipal Water District, Eastern Municipal Water District, and WRCOG. We coordinate this bi-monthly speaker series to keep people informed. And it's not just water people. We're really trying to reach out and get outside our water bubble and start dialogue between public officials, the public, private agencies, private entities, the business community, and really educate and inform about key water issues and what's going on. Because as everyone knows, water is life, and it's not just the water industry that needs to be taking this seriously. And you'll hear more and more in the news about the effects to the economy of the water shortage. And we've got some real experts on the panel today. They're going to talk about it. So today's theme is drought in popular media. So we hear the news, we get little sound bites on the news. And so do they have the story right? Do they not have the story right? Well, we've got some color commentators today, and we're going to play through a video from John Oliver. And this is a segment that he called Water. And it was in his show last week tonight. And so we're going to talk about whether, is it factual? Is it not? Is it all comedy? Is there some truth in what he's saying? So a little different format, but we're trying to roll some comedy in, and everyone has their own opinion of comedy. So keep that in mind. It's comedy, but it's really, really important. And what he's talking about is life and death of the economy in Southern California and the West. So it's a really, really important topic. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the video, and then we're going to take breaks throughout the video and comment on what was brought up in the video. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Let's go on to the next slide. Thank you very much, Michael. Here's our agenda. So we're going to first welcome Chris Gray. Chris, oh, if I can find it, sorry, just lost his bio. Where did it go? Hang on, bear with me for a second. There we go. So Chris Gray is the Deputy Executive Director for the Western Riverside Council of Governments, as we all know as WRCOG. It's a joint powers authority consisting of 18 cities, the County of Riverside, Eastern and Western Municipal Water Districts, the Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. So with that, Chris, you got any updates for us?
I do. Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who attended our General Assembly. For those of you who were there, it was a great time was had by all. We had about 700 people. We were able to hear from Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak about his relationship with Steve Jobs, innovation, entrepreneurship. And it also gave us an opportunity to really come together as a region for the first time since the pandemic. So I want to thank everyone who was in attendance and everyone who wasn't able to make it. We look forward to seeing you next year. Next slide, please. So our event's not possible without our sponsors. I want to thank, first of all, Eastern and Western Municipal Water Districts for being one of our primary sponsors. For those of you at the event, they co-sponsored the centerpieces, which I heard were extremely popular. And I know they were extremely popular because there weren't any left over. But we also received a sponsorship from the Elsinore Valley Water District as well as the Metropolitan Water District. Again, I want to thank everyone who sponsored the event. It was a tremendous success, and we look forward to having the event next year. Next slide, please. On a more of a general technical note, WRCOG prepares an annual fee comparison study. It's actually on a biannual basis. And this question has come up is, do development impact fees impact housing production and development production? And so in 2016, WRCOG prepared a fee comparison study for the WRCOG region and also included Coachella Valley and San Bernardino County. What's important is this includes all impact fees, so it includes water and sewer fees. It allows agencies to compare their fees against jurisdictions and also compare fees across land use types. The study is currently being updated, and we expect it to be finalized and distributing that study by December of 2022. And with that, Craig, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and that's the end of my update.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Always good to hear from you. Love working with WRCOG. They're a great partner, and we're happy that you include the water agencies in WRCOG and that you recognize the importance of water. So thank you for all you do. All right, let's get into the presentation. Let's get to our bios. So great speakers today. Bill Hasencamp is going to join us. Bill is the manager of Colorado River Resources for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, where he develops and manages water supply programs to augment Metropolitan's Colorado River supplies. He's been with Metropolitan for 20 years, negotiating transfer agreements with irrigation districts, exchange agreements, and funding new water supply programs to augment Metropolitan's Colorado River supplies. Bill is one of California's representatives to the Colorado River Salinity Control Forum. That really doesn't give a lot of background on how busy Bill is. This is not part of his bio. I'm at the NWRI conference, and Bill spoke yesterday. He's one of the leading experts on all Colorado River issues and a super popular speaker, and really appreciate he's given us some time today because he is a busy man. The other speaker that we have is equally talented, and we're so happy to have her. Heather Dyer is joining us. She is the Chief Executive Officer and General Manager at San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District, a position she's held since December of 2019. She has a great background that you don't see in the water industry very much. Heather is a fisheries biologist. So she worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from 2009 to 2013 in Louisiana and Southern California as Santa Ana River biologist. She holds a degree in resource biology and dual master's degrees, Master of Science in Marine Biology and Executive MBA from Claremont Graduate University in May of 2019. Now, Heather is a mom, and moms have duties. So Heather is Zooming her kid to school today, and we'll jump in a few minutes when she gets here, but we're really happy that she's made the time for us today. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So keep this in mind, everybody. Keep this in mind. It's always dangerous comedy. The views and opinions and jokes said by John Oliver are not endorsed by or are reflective of Western Municipal Water District, Eastern Municipal Water District, Western Riverside Council of Governments. Some people find jokes offensive. We've tried to edit everything out of this that we thought was offensive and stick to the water story. So we're doing the best we can. However, if you know John Oliver, you know he's kind of goofy and he's silly and he likes to make jokes. His job is to be funny, but he's tackling a very serious topic here. So let's get to it. Don't read lips either. We've edited out some of the comments, so you can read Bill's lips. Bill will be well behaved and not use any of that language, but please don't read lips too carefully. And we'll get going, and let's start the video, and we'll take a break and we'll discuss some of the topics. So Michael, play it. All right. Yeah, the rest of that we're not going to watch. It's not appropriate for our delicate ears here in Riverside County. So, uh, Bill, 2 to 4 million acre feet, basically a voluntary cutback. Well, I don't know what. Collaboratively work on how to cut 2 to 4 million acre feet amongst the basin states. Is that achievable? It's a huge amount of water.
Yeah, it is a huge amount of water. Ultimately, it's going to be the hydrology and the reservoir conditions that determine how big of a cut we need to make. She was assuming that we stay, that Commissioner Teuton, who made the statement, was assuming that the dry years we've had the last 2 or 3 years continue. And if they continue, we'll get to the point where we have to make cuts 2 to 4 million acre feet a year. So she's kind of getting ahead of the curve and requesting it for next year. We've been meeting weekly with the upper basin and lower basin states. There have been separate meetings with tribes and with Mexico to come up with a plan. At least a concept. We came up with a concept that wasn't quite big enough last week. And there wasn't really a big announcement by the feds last week. They acknowledged the work that's been done. They acknowledged that more work needs to be done. And the commissioner and assistant secretary are here in Salt Lake City to try to move that forward today, to try to see if we can get a plan by the end of the year. I think the big question is, if the plan is 1 million acre feet or 1.5 million, is that good enough? Or are the Fed's still going to say, no, we're gonna take action? I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainties. It's not nearly as cut and dry as the press. In fact, the press is disappointed. They were hoping for some big announcement last week, but it was really kind of watered down, to recognize that we need more time. But for the implications for our region, however, the reality is we have to change the way we view the Colorado in Southern California. We went through a transition in 2002 where we lost 800,000 acre feet of water. Metropolitan, our agency, Southern California, lost 700,000 of it. We've built back resources through transfers and storing water in Lake Mead. So in a year like this, we could have an absolutely full Colorado River aqueduct, since there's virtually no water from the state project to move to 13 million residents. All of the state project is staying in 6 million residents that rely on the state project, and 13 million are getting water from the Colorado River. And this year, the people that are in the Colorado River region are much better off because of our resources, but the drought is equally as bad in both regions. And part of the plan that we are moving forward is a recommendation to our board that we go to a mandatory conservation district-wide in 2023 if it's another dry year. And we will likely have to reduce our diversions from the Colorado River in perpetuity. So we're going to have to figure out not just the areas that are getting water from the state, but the areas getting water from the Colorado also are going to have to step up and do even more than the great work we've already done to this point. And that's the future as well. Is going to be, how are we going to live with less water? We're going to have to make more changes again, as we did 20 years ago. And it's going to start with perhaps a mandatory call next year.
Yeah. Heather, your thoughts?
I think now is the moment, right? Like it's on us. We got to figure out how to lead this state to a generational. And so for me, someone asked in the chat about desalination. This comment applies to all water projects, all water deals, in fact. There's always going to be impacts. There's environmental impacts, there's economic impacts, there's, industry impacts. And really the goal is to find the projects that make the most sense in a particular area and try to get those built. So maybe it's groundwater banking in some regions, desal in a couple places along the coast, new storage above ground reservoirs. You probably talked about my background earlier, but I'm an environmental biologist. I believe strongly in keeping the ecology of California whole. but you can't tell me there's nowhere else in this state we can build an above ground storage reservoir. It's really hard. It is not impossible. We've spent 10 years figuring out how to pull 30% of the base flow out of the Santa Ana River with an endangered fish to have a recycled water program. It was really hard, but it is not impossible. We found a way to keep the species whole, the river whole, and it took our collective action and commitment in order to do that. And so I just feel like, you know, Bill is going to have to come up with a 1.5 million acre feet of new water somewhere. Let's start looking for those projects, those generational projects all throughout California. Because if you reduce one party's reliance on the Colorado River by figuring out a different supply for them, that opens up that resource for others. So this is a statewide problem, and rather having it be the burden of each local agency to figure it out, plan it, permit it, pay for it, let's look at this as a statewide problem, because again, we are connected through our economy, through our industry, through our way of life. We are one state. And so we really, I believe, need to look at this as a generational opportunity to make sure there is sustainable, reliable water for all Californians for the next 50, 100 years. And it will take us all. No one can do it on their own. And so that's what I advocate for as the solution.
Yeah, I feel bad for you, Heather. You're just a poor fisheries biologist lost in the water world. But I think everyone who's on today with us can see the value of Heather and her background and what she brings and what has to come to the water industry. And you know, we have to be big advocates of the environment. And you know, Heather's talking about recycled water, but she was also instrumental in a huge water supply project to benefit Orange County. The Orange County wanted to store water behind Prado Dam, which had an endangered bird. And the plan was not, you can't store water. The plan was, and this is where creative biologists can help. And, you know, we in the water industry say, you know, oh, it doesn't have to be environment versus water. In that situation, the biologist said, well, if you can help move that species out of the reservoir and make it so the species is going to be okay, you can store water. And that's what happened. So ocean desal got voted down by the Coastal Commission in Huntington Beach after whatever the number was, 15 years of hard work to build desal in Huntington Beach, and it got voted down unanimously. And so the water industry looks at that and says, that's just short-term thinking. There are all sorts of ways that all of those environmental issues can be mitigated. And Bill's dealing with the same thing on the Colorado River. And, you know, Bill, maybe you could talk a little bit about the collaboration amongst the states to rethink Colorado River flows and some of the efforts that some of the other states have made to basically buy into some of Metropolitan's projects in the past.
Yeah, so the Colorado River's been successful because of our partnerships and working together, setting aside our legal positions, our hardline positions. And when we are moving forward with this water recycling project, there was an interest by both Las Vegas area and Phoenix area to partner with us, fund some of the water in the project, and then receive a portion of the water that's saved. We would do that by leaving that water in Lake Mead in a wet year in California for them to take whenever they needed it. So it was a good potential partnership. I will say I'm a little discouraged, however, from last week. Last week, if you saw some of the press releases, you saw Southern Nevada Water Authority, you saw CAP and Arizona Department of Water Resources, and you saw the Upper Colorado River Commission all send in letters in response to this deadline or issue press releases that essentially said, no one has done more than our state or our region, and everybody else needs to step up and do more. And it was the first time I've seen this siloed response on the Colorado River in 20 years working on it. And it was very disheartening. And if we go into that route and it's every state on its own, that's going to make things a lot difficult. So so the hope is to get back to this more partnership, collaborative approach. I mean, that's been the success all along, not just on the Colorado River, but as Heather said, here locally, we need to all work together. There was a little bit of signs of that maybe starting to fall apart last week.
Yeah, very interesting. So interesting to have Bill here and hear his comments in the middle of a process. You know, we always hear what happens at the end. It's like the sausage being made and the struggles. And I think it is really a good insight into the complexity of the problem. And it's not just the Colorado River, we see it in the state too. Okay, panelists, Sarah's hitting me with questions here. Are you ready for a few questions?
Yeah.
So why have efforts to address water supply relative to climate change not taken place sooner? What have you guys been doing?
Well, I've been talking about climate change for like 20 years. So I think it's one of those things that's so slow moving that it doesn't become, if you're not looking for it, you're not seeing the effects. It's kind of like a long-term disease, you know? And so we're in the position right now where we have the effects of a long-term disease and the disease itself to be dealing with. So we're talking about, you know, drought, aridification, huge, massive, catastrophic floods, wildfires, all these things on a yearly basis. And then there's also the long-term change to the climate, which is exacerbating all of this. So I do recognize that it's not necessarily we're going to have a drought forever because of climate change. It's actually the opposite. It's, you know, that we will have huge, huge storm events, huge atmospheric rivers, maybe a couple in a row, because, you know, weather is driven by climate. And then that's followed by very long periods of drought. And so we absolutely have to be looking at the changes of the hydraulic cycle and figuring out how do we make those wet periods work to our advantage over the long term and prevent catastrophic damage to all of the downstream communities that, you know, might be harmed by these big floods. So I can't say why it's taken so long to pay attention to climate change, but every single day I see the impacts of climate change in the news. And so I feel like it's finally at the forefront of most people's thinking, at least in the government and the water managers.
Yeah, and climate change is horrific, right? We who knows where we're going to be in 20 years. But 10 years ago, the reclamation did start acknowledging and analyzing the impacts. And we saw that by mid-century, the Colorado we knew could be 20 to 30% less water than we've had in the past. And we have been adapting. We haven't been waiting. We've figured out a way to add water to Lake Mead and leave our own state apportionments in Lake Mead and take collectively less water. But what we've really seen is the last 3 years have been a really intense drought mixed in with a long-term climate change. So this really intense drought that gave us 5% allocations on the state project and record low levels in Lake Powell, that crept up much faster than we thought. Now, is that the new reality? Is it going to be as dry as the last 2 years going forward? If it is, then all bets are off. Hopefully we'll get back to a somewhat more normal, but it is definitely going to be drier, and we will have more and more extremes, and we're going to have to adapt faster than we've been adapting for sure.
All right, thank you. Okay, now you have to answer this one fast if you got an answer, because we're running out of time. But there was talk about development and surf parks and golf courses shouldn't be in deserts, and Las Vegas shouldn't have a fountain. Some of our customers would say, why'd you allow that warehouse to be built in my neighborhood when you're asking me to cut back? Heather, you got 1 minute to tell me how development fits in with water supply and long-term water supply planning.
I think development has to be planned to be part of the solution. They should be investing in water capture projects. They should be using the least amount of water possible. They should basically be, you know, part of the solution. And I go back to, you can't say no to development and industry because that is part of our economy. So you just have to figure out how to do it smarter, how to do it better, how to make the benefits spread to all of the areas. So it's just part of the complex problem. It's one variable that we have to figure out the right answer to.
Bill?
Yeah, and we are developing, we are growing, and we are using less water. So development doesn't mean using more water. You have to put in codes and you have to put in restrictions on development and existing uses. But we've shown that we can continue to grow economically using less water, but it's a constant process of adaptation.
That's right. I agree. Okay. Last question. We have some great experts here. What do you think that the people on the program today should be thinking about? What's your last thought you want to leave with people? Bill, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think we're the last 3 years have shown us how bad things can get. We never had contemplated 5% allocations on the state project. We never contemplated that Lake Mead would drop 45 feet in just 2 years and continue to drop. And so we have to rethink the way we manage and view water. Things like non-functional turf. There's no place for that in the future. We need to figure out how to live with a different water footprint going forward. And we have to do it quicker than we thought. And it can be painful, but we've done it before. It's not like people are leaving our region because there's not a reliable water supply. It just means that maybe you won't have a nice green lawn, and maybe you will have to have a low flow shower head. But we just have to change more quickly and be ready to adapt as this climate and drying is happening really quickly.
Heather?
I advocate that we expect of our lawmakers and our state government that we have a long-term California water supply vision that is funded long-term, that people are working together to develop these projects and this strategy, not one time, but two, three, 4 times, and just keep implementing it, because these things don't get built on our own. We can't afford to do it all our own. We need our partnerships. We need that connection with the state and other local agencies. And so I think that we should demand of our government that it is a priority, just like all the other, important issues in California, but none of those things can happen without a reliable water supply. So to me, it's the most important issue, and we should expect a vision and a strategy to implement that long-term vision.
Thanks, Heather. And I'll take that as a softball. Solve the water crisis. Man, we are getting huge traction across the state with this coalition. You need to log on. You can Google it, go to the website. This is the future of how we help solve this problem. Water managers have gotten together to solve the water crisis, and we need to get momentum. We need Sacramento to be on board, and thank goodness the governor issued his new water supply concept, but we need to bring life to that and reality to that and build all the things you've heard about today. More surface storage, the ability to move water around, regulatory environments that allow us to exchange water, store water, invest in other people's water, and keep building our local water supplies, like Heather's groundwater recharge basins, like One Water, the recycled water program that Met's doing. But you have to get involved. It's not happening without people outside of the water industry getting involved. So I urge you to spread the word, log on, share it. Really enjoyed the program. Bill, I know Bill's running to go solve statewide water issues or west-wide water issues, so he really gave us some time. And Heather, I really appreciate you scrambling this morning to help us out. Bill, Heather, thank you very much. That was awesome. You guys are a real tribute to the water industry, and thanks for playing our little game with us today. We loved it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. And this concludes our program today.
Thanks all.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Good luck, Bill.